And unfortunately, the peak capacity of a commuter rail is similar to the peak capacity of a high-speed rail. It does not mean, again, that we do not want to move in this direction. Again, we've got limited capacity. We want to see whether we can use some of that limited capacity, and Caltrain is working with us. So we can use maybe 1 or 2 trains per hour and get high speed up and running in the corridor. But our main aspects remain the ones that, how do we meet the 30-minute time between San Jose to, because today it's 57 minutes. How do we meet the transition, the Prop 1A transition of the stations, which basically you need to reduce the time?
Does Prop 1A call out how many trains have to make it in that time?
In the time, no, they don't say how many trains have to make it.
So just to be clear, if a single train went from Los Angeles to San Francisco in the appointed time, that would meet the provisions of Prop 1A. Wouldn't be an ideal system. I think we can all agree on that.
Yes, it says, I believe, it says without stopping. Yes, that's correct.
All
and that's what it's designed for.
So if any time of the day or night, 24 hours in a day, a train can make its way from Los Angeles to San Francisco in the allotted time, then we've complied technically with Prop 1A. So that takes that challenge off the table in my judgment, because we can clearly make that happen. Not suggesting for a minute that's what you want to produce or that that's what we want to see. So now we're back to the CEQA issue, which was the third piece of the proposal. And we've had a circular conversation on this, in my judgment, and I want to see if we can stop chasing ourselves around the table on this conversation. Here's the challenge. To date, the High Speed Rail Authority has insisted on doing a environmental analysis for what it calls full build-out of a phased system. I think that's a fair characterization. The point that Assemblymember Gordon and Congresswoman Eshoo and I made was we need to scale down the project to something that can be accommodated within the existing right-of-way and that does not involve an aerial viaduct and that works using the existing system, both to avoid costs and impacts. We've also then said in the third point that's made that we called on the authority to abandon its preparation of an EIR for a phased project of larger dimensions over a 25-year time frame. The authority then comes back and says, relying on its legal counsel, that's your cue, relying on its legal counsel, that no, we have to do the EIR for the full phased project. To which I then say, you wouldn't have to do that EIR if you scaled back your definition of a project. To which you then say, but we have to comply with Prop 1A, to which I then say, you can comply with Prop 1A as a legal matter. So I'm going to turn to you and or your staff and or your legal counsel and say, is it your view that CEQA requires you to do an EIR for a project you do not propose to build? And if the answer to that question is no, because I'm thinking it's going to be no, then if we simply scale back the project, aren't we able to scale back the EIR? And the reason for this question is I don't want to see an EIR proceed for a project that is never going to be built, that probably never should be built, but that puts a sword over the head of every property owner up and down this very developed 50-mile stretch of the corridor. Clear enough? So let's go to either you or your legal counsel.
If I may, Senator, purely technically, we couldn't even travel between San Francisco and San Jose in 30 minutes. You would have to rebuild the alignment to achieve that.
Well, you've talked about using the existing corridor for what you call Phase 1, as I understand it, and moving trains up and down that corridor at 120 miles per hour.
No, we wouldn't be running at 120 miles an hour initially in Phase 1, in the first phase. We would have to rebuild that corridor to be able to get to those speeds.
And what does rebuild that corridor mean?
There are many bridges, tunnels, alignments, curves that have to be changed and so completely rebuilt.
Okay, but you're still talking about staying substantially within the right of way to do that,
and
you're still talking about avoiding a viaduct. And so we're not talking about a multi-billion-dollar mega project. We're talking about staying substantially within the right of way, avoiding a viaduct, and moving a train at 124 miles an hour, am I remembering? And 124 miles an hour over, I'm going to call that 50 miles, is that fair?
That's right.
Okay. So if we were talking about that, then you can do that in 30 minutes.
Yes, if you rebuild, yes.
Okay. So understanding that it's not as if we're going to take your 21st century Caltrain and put it on those squeaky old tracks that are still there, excuse me, your 21st century high-speed rail program, put it on those squeaky old tracks, but you can, in fact, make it in half an hour from San Francisco to San Jose without building a viaduct and still staying substantially within the right-of-way, yes?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
And if you can do it at 120 more miles an hour, you can get 50 miles in less than half an hour. And if you can do it in less than half an hour, you can comply with Prop 1A.
On that point, but not on the others.
Well, not on the others because?
Because the others require that I be able to transition stations.
And just to be clear, because there's been either some misunderstanding or misperception or misrepresentation about the proposal is to have people stay on the same train when they arrive in San Jose and move north to San Francisco. So south of San Jose, for the moment, and I understand that it will be an issue because I've got colleagues who've got interest in other parts of the geography, but south of there is not what I'm talking about. You told me in order to make it work, you had to be able to get from San Jose to San Francisco in half an hour, and we've now established that you can do that without building the multi-billion-dollar subsequent phases with the aerial viaduct outside the right-of-way.
Right.
To which I then say, great, why would we be pursuing an EIR for that scope of a project when there's no plan, when I'm suggesting, and others have suggested, that the plan should be scaled back to avoid the need to go in that direction? Let me just add, it's Ms. Aitchison?
Yes, that's
and,
correct.
and tell us a little bit about who you are and where you came from and what your practice is.
You go first.
Sure. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. My name is Danae Aitchison. I'm a Deputy Attorney General with the